Greetings. We have added one new layer of complexity to the Range Rover Classic project. Let me talk you through what we decided to do. Okay, so if you've been watching the first couple episodes, about 289 Range Rover Classic short wheelbases. They are sister cars in the sense that I bought them together from the same seller. One is for parts, one is for restoration. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on with that. Got really into these as I started that project. I knew I loved these cars to begin with, but in parting out and taking apart one of those and starting to shop and plan for the restoration on the other, I realized I have a real affinity for these cars. And I was online in a number of these Facebook forums that I'm a part of now, where I actually found those 289s to purchase and had an opportunity come up that I could not pass up. There was a seller up in Wisconsin that had another sister pair of 91 short wheelbases. This gentleman basically was gifted these cars and a trailer. He thought about doing a restoration on these cars, really needed the trailer for work in his business, and wanted to get rid of them as quickly as possible once he decided he wasn't going to do the restoration. So long and the short, he put them on for sale for a really aggressive number, and it was kind of a no-lose proposition in that the two I picked up, even if I just parted them out, I would make a pretty decent profit. But the idea is actually to restore one, part one out, basically a parallel build to what I did, or what I'm doing, I should say, with the 89s. So let me take you through those cars, but we're going to have not one, but two Restomods going at the same time. I do think this could be pretty efficient in the sense that all the parts and research and shopping for like wheels and suspension and exhausts and all these things I'm doing for the 89s should actually all translate over to the 91s. So it's going to be less work because I'm already putting that work into the 89, and then as I go through each step of that 89 build, I'll be just learning that much more because it's 3 or 4 weeks ahead of what will be the 91 build. So I'll take you through the cars, kind of show you where we're starting, but figured one build wasn't enough for the channel, so now you get to watch two builds simultaneously. I'm going to keep them both part of the same series though, just so you can kind of follow the progress. There will be some differences and some nuances between the two. I'll talk a little bit about that in terms of starting condition, but some of it will come down to like wheel choice, bumper color choices, body color choices. I want to do a little bit different aesthetic, just to mix it up. So anyway, let me take you through both vehicles that I just purchased and had delivered. All right, everybody say hello. This is Henry. Henry is our 2-year-old purebred golden who is usually a pretty big help on projects. He's trying to burn off a little bit of that remaining puppy energy at the moment though. Okay, car number one. So this is a, like I said, 91 short wheelbase, and this is going to be our parts car. It's in not so great shape, but for a parts car, it has all the parts, so that's a good place to start. This car has exterior-wise pretty good panels. So as you can see, really not much rust, not much in the way of dents or dings or anything crazy. There is a little bit of rust here on the rear tailgate, to be expected. The rear bumper, front bumper are pretty shot, unfortunately, because those do go for a pretty decent number online. But overall, it's in pretty good shape. Original wheels are pretty nice. Obviously, the tires are shot. So the story on these things is, like I mentioned, they came as a gift essentially to the person I bought them from on a really nice trailer. Before that, they were owned by a gentleman who had them at some sort of farm or something like that. And basically 10 years ago, roughly, that gentleman drove these vehicles onto that trailer and left them there. And so they haven't been driven in about 10 years. In some cases, that may be a good thing. In others, it creates challenges. And so this is a little different because the 89s, if you've watched some of the first episodes, the one I bought to restore runs. In fact, the previous owner did a ton of engine work to that one, and that was kind of the selling point. The interior is great. It's like a 9 out of 10 out of the box. There's not a whole lot that has to be restored in the interior, and the engine is great. It runs well. Has a brand new rebuilt transmission that's only 4 months old, on and on. So that one is more about exterior cosmetic upgrades and things like that. You know, some rust repair. It does have rust. These 91s are largely rust free for the most part, especially the one I'm going to restore, which I'll show you next. And the work is really getting the engines fired back up and running, or at least one of them, and a little bit of interior work. I'd say the interior of the one I'm going to restore is more like a 7 out of 10 versus a 9 or so out of 10 on the other. So it's a little different, and it'll give me an opportunity to kind of tackle a different part of restoring these, which is more mechanical and engine related, and learn more about that as well, which is something I'm really excited about. So anyway, this is a red one. Like I said, parts car. The interior is not in great shape. In fact, that door doesn't open. But it's not that bad either. I mean, it's about the same condition as the green one from the 89 set that I decided to part out. And so, you know, the instrument cluster, the steering wheel, sort of the guts of the center console, door cards, seats, and upholstery actually is in pretty good shape. I'm gonna, you know, first step here is to clear all this out and throw this junk away and kind of get it to a decent state. You know, the electronics and components, things like that, you know, are all here. And so, you know, it should be, you know, pretty desirable for parting out and for the limited amount of parts I may need for the sister car. I'm not actually planning to need a whole ton of those. And so that's the good news. So anyway, we're going to part this out and we're going to sell this one. Just wanted to give you a quick overview of this. It does have the engine. This car has 93,000 miles. So both of these are actually pretty low mileage. And so, you know, there's certainly a lot here in the engine, like the ABS pump and, you know, oil related items, distributors, you know, air intakes, you name it, that a lot of people really are seeking from these cars on the forums and things like that. So that is the overview of the red one. Let's go check out the gold. Okay, the gold one, or actually I should say Roman bronze, which is what this color is. This car is in really nice condition. Very little rust. I've gotten under the car. I've looked in all the usual places, like the front passenger footwell, driver footwell, rear trunk area, especially where the spare tire is, and over where the like factory sub and all that would be. The inner and outer sills underneath the car, running both sides, etc. No rust. So that was one big selling point on this car. Number two selling point was that the car, take you over here for a moment, only has 86,000 miles. And it is a one owner car. So it was only owned by one person technically. Like I said, it's driven on a trailer and not driven for 10 years. So a restored, for those of you who are kind of in the community, restored, you know, 86,000 mile single owner classic with no rust. Obviously, just getting it to like a regular restored condition of running, like if I were to just clean it up and get it running in this condition, that kind of car commands a pretty decent number. My investment in this car after parting out the other car may very well be close to $0. So essentially, if I just spent a minimal amount, got this thing running and cleaned up and whatnot, I could obviously make a pretty nice profit selling it that way. The plan, however, because it's a lot more fun, is to do a Restomod on this one as well. Like I said, very similar to the 89, but a little different. Maybe I'll change the body color. Maybe I'll go with different wheels. Maybe we'll do different treatment on the front bumper. Who knows? But the point is to actually put some money into this and restore it, and then have a fully restored, so to speak, or resto-modded, you know, fully resprayed 85,000 mile single owner classic, which should command a very nice number. And again, because the car is really not costing me anything out of the gate in terms of just getting it here, should yield a similar or higher profit, but also include the fun of doing the build. The other thing that'll be there to decide is that out of the 89 and the 91, I'm planning on keeping one personally. I mean, the whole point was actually to do one restoration and keep it. Doing this sister project, just something that sort of fell in my lap, given the opportunity I had to purchase these from a price perspective. So I very well may decide that the idea of a single owner, low mileage, this one has a glass sunroof, for instance, the 89 doesn't, just those kind of little variables, I'll, push me to keep this one instead and keep the, I guess, lower mileage, better one, if you want to call it that, for me, and then sell and flip the other one. But anyway, we'll get to that. I'll take you along on the journey how I decide that. I do want to get them both restored and drive both of them for a while just to figure out which one I like, which will actually be very cool. And, I'm lucky that I will have the ability to do that. But this one, like I said, really nice condition. The body panels are great. There's really not a dent on this thing. There's really no rust. It really just needs initially a good cleaning. So that's what really I'm going to do today, is like a full detail on this thing just to get it baseline, try to understand what I'm working with. It's kind of hard to tell on the interior. Like I said, I think it's about a 7 out of 10. I mean, it has little bits of cracking here in the center console, which are actually going to be, I think, fairly easy to repair because it's not like there's wood missing. It's just lifting. And, the carpets and things, they look like they're in nice shape, but, we won't know until we really get going on this. For those who follow the channel, I do a ton of detailing. So this is actually great. I didn't really have to do a lot yet to the 89 because the interior was pretty well taken care of. It was a car that the gentleman drove. So like this has just been sitting here essentially pickling, right? So this is going to be an exercise in, getting a sort of pickled interior to proper status. As you guys can see, there's, just a little bit of dust and things on the upholstery, but it's not bad. I mean, you see these barn find videos and stuff where, you've got cars that have been sitting out in a barn for, 10 years or 15 years, and people have to, put on like a hazmat suit basically to, do work in them, things like that. On this one, it's not great, but it's not terrible. I mean, it's not going to require, crazy amounts of whatever. There's not bugs and insects and wildlife and stuff crawling around in this car. So shouldn't be too bad, but here's a good example right here. These wheel arches on the 89 are shot. I mean, they're completely rusted out. On these 91s, they're in great shape. There isn't rust, underneath these areas in the floorboards where you typically see it, or, in the front passenger area. I've checked under this mat and stuff, there's no rust under here. So yeah, just kind of need to clean up the interior and see what we're working with. On the engine side of things, which is the most important part, because that's really the crux of getting this thing fixed. Engine overall, it's going to require a good bit of cleanup. There's leaves in here. Is evidence in here of, animals, squirrels, mice, whatever over the years, kind of making little nests and homes in here. So we're going to completely blow this out with a blower. We're going to clean it out. We're going to engine degrease it, spray it all down, wash it, you name it. Again, to baseline it, I have done a little bit of looking. There are areas where a couple wires are chewed from the harness that comes in through the firewall. That said, I've tried to trace most of this stuff, and the stuff that is chewed so far appears to be somewhat inconsequential. And I'm hoping that really holds up once I kind of get all this crap out of here. You can see the distributor cap has been disconnected all but 2. So we're gonna need to rewire that and get all that squared away. But the plan is to clean this engine up, change the spark plugs, number 1, change the filters, number 2, air filters, oil filter, number 3, change the oil, number 4, new battery, which I've already purchased, and then we're going to go through the proper procedure to fire up the engine. So I'll put all this on the channel because I know there's a lot of people are interested in how do you start a car that hasn't been started in so long. But to the extent this thing fires, runs out of the gate with just that minimal amount of maintenance investment and investigation, this would be like winning the lottery. Not expecting that. I assume there are going to be issues with the fuel pump, or some of these electrical connections that have been chewed through are actually vital to the car starting or running for any extended period of time. So long and the short is, as part of the budget for this build, which I have one for every build I do, whether it's the Porsche stuff I've done or these Range Rovers or whatever, part of the budget does assume a pretty decent, several $1,000 investment in getting this engine running. The upside of these engines is they're really straightforward for the most part. I know Land Rover kind of freaks people out in general, but essentially this is just like a Buick V8. I mean, it's very accessible. You know, the engine bay is quite open, comparatively speaking. I know there's more open engine bays if you're talking like American Muscle, where you got a, you know, big engine sitting here and there's all this room around to the point you even have to paint the engine bay, you know, because it's so exposed. But, you know, compared to like my perspective of Porsche 911 and stuff like that, this is super accessible for work. So you could do a lot of it yourself. Alternatively, there's a lot of shops, great indies that do Land Rover, Range Rover work that could work on this. I would argue, given the simplicity of this V8, you also could take this to a variety of regular indies that do all kinds of makes and models. Because again, it's really almost just like a Buick V8, essentially, to work on. And so most people who know any kind of fuel-injected V8 motor are going to be able to do some of the work on this car. So there may be a really cost-effective way to get some of that done. We'll cover that maybe in a future episode if, in fact, we need to do that work. But this is where we're starting on the gold one. I am not planning to keep it gold, so hopefully nobody on the channel is seeing this Roman bronze color and just falling in love with it completely. I think it's a cool vintage color, to be clear. I want to do something a little more interesting, and frankly, I'm a big fan of a respray. Even with a car in this nice a condition originally, I just like the newness from that Restomod perspective of a new respray and a newer color, if that makes sense. I just think that really adds a lot. It's much more obviously in line with like what people are doing with all the Defenders and all that kind of stuff. You know, if you look online, like Brooklyn Coachworks, or any of these companies that do these really tricked out Defenders and stuff. I get that's not for everybody. For the purists, they would say, look, this paint's in great shape for the most part. It's original color. Keep it. It's just not my deal. So to each their own. Hopefully everybody respects that. But we will be doing a respray on this. And I'm going to have a lot of fun choosing the color. I think we're going to go something sort of blue-esque. In the blue family for sure, just not quite sure which blue, so that'll be kind of part of the creative experience of figuring this out. But there she is, there they are. One build was not enough, so now we're doing two. So appreciate you guys checking out this episode, and hope you guys enjoy this build as it kind of tracks along about a month behind the build we already have going on the 89s. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe if you want to follow this. I will have a playlist specific to the classic Restomod series, and I will catch you guys on the next one.